This is Gus Summers, and you're watching In-Show Celebrities. This is the time I take every Monday to talk about some of my favorite films and actors. This week, we have one of Hollywood's greatest actors. His name is synonymous with Hollywood. Of course, I'm talking about the great Mr. Cary Grant. His career spanned decades. He came into Hollywood in the 1930s, was discovered by Mae West. She gave him his first leading role, and from there, his career just went on an upward trajectory for years. He worked alongside of some of Hollywood's greatest actors and has starred in some of Hollywood's most iconic films. Well, first up, we have a film that was a departure from his normal romantic and leading man style. This film was a little more dark, and he's a little more sinister. The film, Suspicion. He plays Johnny, a jet-setting playboy who basically lives off other people's money. And he finds and marries this young woman, Lena, portrayed wonderfully by another of Hollywood's greatest actresses, Joan Fontaine. Her character is naive, we'll say, to the world. So when Johnny comes along, Cary Grant, he's worldly, he's sophisticated, and she falls for his charms, and they marry. And her father, she comes from a rich family. He's a wealthy industrialist and tries to persuade her from marrying Johnny, but she is set on it. So they get married, and as the movie progresses, she realizes that he is basically just a playboy. He loves to gamble. She realizes he doesn't have a job, and she tries to encourage him to become more established. So she gets him a job with the family. He says he'll work at it, and the whole time behind her back he's still gambling. He ends up embezzling money from the company. He ends up being fired. She finds out it hasn't been working, but all along he's always scheming something. Nothing's ever in the forefront. Nothing is ever, you don't see him do things. It's always, she suspects he's up to no good. But there comes a point where, he brings along a friend, portrayed wonderfully by Nigel Bruce. He plays Beakley, his good lifelong friend. He's a joyful character. He loves Johnny, believes Johnny. Just real quick, Nigel Bruce, you would remember him. He is well known as playing Dr. Watson in the Sherlock Holmes series with Basil Rathbone. That's where you would recognize him. As soon as you see him, you go, I know who that is. That's Dr. Watson. Well, you find out that Bleaky is telling Lena, Joan Fontaine, Johnny's good. Don't suspect him of anything bad. But the whole time, Johnny is scheming something. He's doing something. And she begins to suspect him and thinks at one point that he wants to kill her and get the insurance money because her father no longer wants to, he's not going to give him any money, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, and so Bleakley comes along. Johnny's trying to convince him to invest in this deal, and he's almost going to do it. And Lena convinces Bleakley, otherwise don't do it. Johnny is scheming something, and well, I don't want to give too much away, but things begin to happen. You really wonder, is Johnny really doing something, because they go on this trip, someone dies, he's being questioned, that he went somewhere and he's saying he didn't. So anyway, and like I said, I don't want to give it away, but, wonderful acting. I love it because we're used to Cary Grant being, the leading man, the romantic, or he's wonderful at comedy. So here he is playing Cary Grant on the dark side, and he does wonderful in this. I just want to say, there's this one scene that's great. You see that he's Joan Fontaine's in their house. She's talking with him, and they begin to walk up the stairs, and he's walking right next to her, and she's just listening to him talk, and they're walking up the stairs, and he is talking to her. You don't want to say that he's threatening her, but it's more in his presence, the way he's walking, and the way he's right next to her, and the way she's looking at him. You just see it, as they're walking slowly. You just hear his words. You just see the back of him, and his head's turned towards her as they're walking. He's walking really slow, really close to her, and you're like, okay, Cary Grant, you're there. What a great film. Okay, I'm scared of you now. It's a fantastic film. I know you love it. Next up is another wonderful film. It's difficult to pick from his films because he has so many, and they're all so wonderful. But again, these are just the ones that I really enjoy, and I can extend this for an hour and mention 30 films that I love. But this next film, great film, The Bishop's Wife. He plays Dudley, an angel. We go from a sinister character to an angel. And I love, just how different each one is portrayed. Here, unlike Suspicion, he is very, very knowing, because he's an angel. He knows things, and the way he talks to people, and the way he stands there, it's just very, like I mentioned, someone who has the upper hand on you. So, but he's on Earth, and he protects a certain area, or he's involved in the lives of certain people in a certain area. Well, there is a bishop that is wanting to build a cathedral, and he's having he's a newly elected bishop, or he's been a bishop for a little while, but he's moved up. So he was from a little church, and now he's at a big church, and now he wants to build this big cathedral, and he's trying to raise money, and all the pressures of building this cathedral is finally getting to him, and he prays one day, and he says, basically, God, help me, I need guidance, and so on and so forth. And the bishop, again, another iconic actor. I love the way he portrays him, Mr. David Niven. He plays Henry, the bishop, and he's just weighed down by how this is not progressing. He's trying to convince a local rich benefactor to provide him the money, but she wants the cathedral built a certain way, and place her husband's name on it, and he's trying to tell her, it's not about the glory of man, it's about the glory of God. She goes, she doesn't care. She's going to have it the way she wants it, but she's going to pay for it. And so he's trying to convince her. Her name is Miss Hamilton. And, wonderful actress. She's one of those actresses that you saw in many films. Miss Gladys Cooper. She plays wonderfully. She plays a lot of these similar roles, very aristocratic, very wealthy and very pompous. But he's trying to convince her to give funds and let the cathedral be built, for the glory of God, and so on and so forth. She's giving him a hard time, and it's weighing him down. But it's not only weighing him down, and what it's happening is that it's having an effect not only on him professionally, but most importantly, with his family. He's not that he's a stranger, he's a working man, so he's constantly trying to deal with the struggles of the church and build this cathedral, and so he's kind of alienating himself from his wife Julia. Another great actress, Miss Loretta Young. She plays Julia wonderfully as the caring, concerned wife, and their daughter, trying to nurture their daughter, take care of her. And here comes Cary Grant. He tells David Niven he's an angel, and I love it. David Niven doesn't believe it, but the little things that Cary Grant says, like, "You of all people, you should know." I love that. I love little lines like that. But it's true. David Niven, you're a bishop. You have all this knowledge about God and what have you. You don't recognize an angel. Yeah. So great little scenes. But Cary Grant's there. He's helping and guiding David Niven and all the people he encounters. He enables to help. He talks to Mrs. Hamilton, and there's another gentleman, a professor who knows David Niven and Loretta Young, Professor Rutledge, portrayed wonderfully by Monty Woolley. He always has this distinguished beard. He always plays professors or very wise men, and he was known as the Beard. So he plays a professor, good friends with David Niven and Loretta Young. So even Dudley talks with him because they meet, and he encourages them to live lifelong dreams, or reveal certain things about themselves that will benefit them and others. But along the way, what happens is right away, Dudley becomes affectionate with Julia, and you see him begin to have more feelings for her, which is an interesting little aspect. For those who know, who have read about angels and such, one of the things was that when angels take on human form, they now become susceptible to human weakness. So looking at it from that standpoint, from that kind of theological historical aspect of angels, you begin to understand why he begins to have feelings for her. He's an angel, he's not supposed to, but he's no longer in his angelic form. He's in a human form, susceptible to human emotion, and he begins to have feelings for Julia. And Julia, you see, in return begins to have feelings for Dudley, because they start doing things together, and he takes her to dinner, and takes her ice skating, all these little things that David Niven should be doing, but Dudley's doing it. Well, anyways, as the movie progresses, David Niven becomes jealous, and because he begins to see Dudley and Julia's relationship, and he tries to confront Dudley, and Dudley is telling him, I'm here trying to encourage you and help you. Anyways, I don't want to give too much away. I've probably already given away too much, but great film, great performances. Cary Grant, again, being an angel on earth. What other actor could you think of that could do such a great job as an angel? Okay, one last film. Comedy at one of his best. He has this comedic timing, his presence and what have you, always wonderful. The film, Mr. Eldings Builds a Dream House. He is an accountant executive who lives in New York, lives in an apartment. It's rather cramped. He has his wife and his 2 children. He has a maid. His wife, her name is Muriel, portrayed again wonderfully by Myrna Loy. Myrna Loy, you'll remember her from other films with William Powell called The Tin Man. She plays his wife. They play this husband-wife detective team. Wonderful series. We'll focus on him another time. but she wants to redecorate the house and tear down walls. And he's like, "Are you crazy? No, that'll be too expensive." Well, he finds an ad for an old home in Connecticut, because they live in New York, go to Connecticut, and he sees, well, why redecorate my house and do all this for this much, where if I spend just a little more, I can have a big home and what have you. And it's funny because in the beginning you could see the times. He talks about how he is an account executive. He lives in New York, and he's middle class, and he earns $15,000 a year. That's like $15,000. Wow. And he lives well, and the kids go to private school. And the reason he wants to buy the house is that they're going to charge him $7,000, to redecorate and everything. And he's all, $7,000? What? That's crazy. And where he could spend, like $10,000 and buy a house in the country. So he finds an ad and thinks it's wonderful. He takes his wife, they look at it, and it's a revolutionary house. It has a barn, has acreage, it's like huge spread. Like I forgot how many acres it was, 30 acres. It was something like that, and so they want to buy it. And so the salesman knows that it's an old house, so it needs a lot of repairs and what have you. And you hear these voiceovers. There's voiceovers, and you hear them talking in his head. He goes, basically, man, this guy's a sucker. I'm going to sell him this property that I haven't been able to get off my hands for years. So, and they buy the property, and so they have a wonderful friend. Again, another fine actor. Another great, one of my favorites as well. Melvin Douglas. He's a friend of the family who have known him since like college or what have you. And they take him and they say, what do you think? And he goes, I'll try to get your money back. You guys are crazy. Look at this thing. And, being the voice of reason, he goes, I'm already seeing you bought with your heart's not your head. You know what you're going to get into here? And they're like, no, this is going to be wonderful. You're going to see it. And, Cary Grant goes in the house. He was watching, pow, like he fell through. And so then he goes, I'll get one of my guys on it, who is a house inspector, property manager, inspector. And so he gets his friend. He goes, "Yep. Well, what is your recommendation?" "My recommendation? Tear it down." He goes, "It's structurally unsound. It's leaning." And he shows him the house. From one side the house looks fine, but he shows him from the other side the house is leaning. He goes, he's crazy. Bill just doesn't want us to buy it. We'll get our own inspector. And they get like 5, and they're all like, "Yep, tear it down. Yep, tear it down. Yep, tear it down." So ultimately, they have to, they concede and they have to tear it down. You see him working working with the architect. The architect says, "Okay, here's a basic floor plan that we want to do." And then they start going crazy. Well, if I'm going to have this, why don't we make my room a little bigger? This is my personal room. And Myrna Lloyd said, "Well, if I need a sewing room here," and they ended up, redrawing the whole plan. And so the guy comes back and says, "Okay, well, here it is. They're charging. It's outrageous, but the cost, I think you'll love it. It has all your designs. It's going to cost $18,000. They're like, $18,000? What? No, it's outrageous. But they go ahead with it, and then they start building the house. And then it's everything all the problems they run into, of having to tear it down, having to build the foundation. There's a particular room that doesn't have has a latch that keeps locking. They kept being locked in the house, and so when they're complaining, they'll hear a thump, 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 because they're using this pole to thump, because no one hears them knocking or yelling. So everyone gets locked in this room, and so you see them having trouble when they're trying to build a well, when they're trying to lay the foundation, as the house is being built. And all the while, Cary Grant is trying to come up with the slogan for this company that sells ham. So his job is basically in peril. So everyone at the company who hasn't done well with the slogan has been fired. So now that's in the top of his mind. So, then he finds out that his good friend Bill and his wife were college sweethearts at one point. So now he's worried about his friend Bill. Now he's seen, kind of looking at him in a different light because, Bill's over all the time. And, after the house was built, he visits and what have you. So anyways, a great film. Great film. It's one of my favorites. Marvin Douglas, Melvin Douglas is great. Myrna Loy, Cary Grant, they're all fantastic. Anyways, great films. The films I mentioned were Suspicion, The Bishop's Wife, and Mr. Belding's Builds His Dream House. All wonderful films, and I can't think of any Cary Grant film that isn't wonderful. Well, that's what I got for you today. This is Gus Summers, and you're watching In-Show Celebrities. This is the time I take every Monday to talk about some of my favorite films and actors. And remember, don't forget, every Thursday to visit theinshow.com, where I host The In-Show, where I bring on celebrities and all sorts of guests to talk about, projects or whatever it is that they want to talk about. Of course, be sure to look for us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Flickr, Instagram, all those great media sites. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, Gus has left the building.